Alright, so another title for the video is probably something really inflammatory, like don't summon for this bum or something along those lines. And I don't actually think Sherlock's all that bad, but dude, come on. I am seeing people on social media polling for this guy. I'm seeing people in the Discord, I'm seeing people on Twitter, and I'm wondering who is summoning for this guy. Like, usually I have to make like a video being like, hey, don't summon for this, we got better stuff coming along the pipeline, you know, just wait out on this banner. But for some reason, I don't know if it's just the summoning itch that's like hitting everybody right before Koyenskaya releases in like 2 days here, but everyone's like, you know what, now I'm gonna start burning all my Saint Quartz. I'm like, man, how, for one, how do you guys still have Saint Quartz left over after Morgan released and Melusine came out? But now we got Koyenskaya in like 2 days, 3 days from whenever I'm putting this video on my channel, and it's like, how are you gonna summon for this guy? So that's what we're gonna talk about in today's video. I'm gonna do a little mini review for Sherlock, you know, in case you're one of those goofy goobers that decided to summon on this banner. But for everybody else, just don't summon on this banner. Just be smart and just save all of your stuff for Koyenskaya. Trust me, she'll do way more for your account than this guy ever could do for your account. But before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that daily FGO content, as I will always make sure that you are informed on what is going on both versions of the game, both NA and JP. And if you want to see me play the game live, well, I do that every weekday starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over on my Twitch, which is linked down in the description down below. But let's start moving into this. So first and foremost, this boy Sherlock, I've always said that this is like one of the best servants you'll probably never use, and I mainly say that because his NP is really strong. This, as like an individual NP, I think is definitely up there as one of the best NPs in the game, because being able to give the entire party not only Pierce invincibility for 3 turns, but also Pierce defense for 3 turns, basically means you're going to be able to get around 99% of all of the bosses and the difficult, annoying guys in the game, because save for a few bosses that I'm not going to spoil because they're a part of current JP story, you're going to be able to get around any boss's invincibility, their dodge, or their defensive stacking, and that's just very useful. Because on top of that, if that little bit of utility wasn't nice enough, he's also going to be cutting their defense down by at least 30%, and if you, I don't know, get really lucky / unlucky to pull numerous of this guy on, say, different GSSRs, you can get all the way up to 50% to really allow you to just slam dunk them. So not only can the bosses not protect themselves because you're giving yourself the buff to bypass them, you're not buff removing, which this is technically better, by the way. Having the ability to pierce it by yourself is better than buff removal because some bosses have unremovable buffs, right? So it's like a guaranteed way to get around their buffs, and you're also smacking them with a demerit. But let's say the bosses have, say, debuff immunity. Even on top of all of that, you're still going to smack them with really good crits because bare minimum he's giving everybody 50% for 3 turns, and that's the waiver crit skill, right? Which is a pretty solid crit damage. So not the most crazy thing in the world, but it gets the job done. And then, you know, God forbid you get them all the way to overcharged 5 over here, and then you get that Merlin 100% crit damage. So this in and of itself, I think is very valuable. I think this NP is super strong because it allows you to basically just guarantee go in on a boss, right? Because you're not going to be stopped by anything that they're going to be doing. And then even if you can't hit them with the defense down, you're still going to be hitting them with really big crits, and they can't stop you from hitting them with really big crits because you're bypassing all of their defenses, right? That's really good. Now, they've tried to buff his skills, which I think are the weaker part of Sherlock, to try to help him out a little bit, because I think originally they wanted Sherlock to kind of be the DPS himself, but it seems as though they might be shifting him more into that support role. We'll have to see what they do once they buff the 3rd skill, because we have this one already on NA, I believe. The 2nd one is one we have to get. It'll be coming up in the future here for us over on the NA version of the game, but being able to bomb stars is very strong in coordination with this over here, because, you know, what good is getting a crit damage buff if you can't actually do any crits? And him being an art servant, well, it's not exactly known for being able to gen a whole lot of stars, and his star gen and his quick cards aren't really built for being able to gen stars himself. I think if they do hook him up with something on the 3rd skill, like let's say just dropping like 15 stars a turn for 3 turns, and you make him kind of like an arts crit support type person. I know we have Lady Avalon for the next summer event, and she's kind of already doing that, but maybe Sherlock being just a different option could be good. That might help him out quite a bit, because this is also very nice as well. Being able to like reduce all enemies' arts resistance, making your art servants even stronger, right? So not only are you getting all these buffs over here, but if you're using art servants with Sherlock, they get even more bonuses as well. Plus, he offers you technically a bit of survivability because he can seal an enemy's NP for a turn, and that does buy you a turn whenever the enemy's going to fire their NP. So that's also very nice. The thing that I think really did push him a bit further was the fact that they gave him this 50% battery. Because I look at Sherlock and I'm like, okay, this guy's value and is just how strong his NP is, right? This NP is very, very strong, but sometimes he struggles to get to it. So they were like, you know what, just smack a 50% battery on there and call it a day. That definitely helps out a lot, especially in conjunction with this third skill over here, where he gives himself the massive arts buff, which is basically supposed to supercharge his own NP generation rate, because you get this massive arts buff that's not only buffing the damage of your arts cards, but it's also giving you extra NP gain on said arts cards. And so, you know, the idea is you get a massive arts buff, you get some crit stars on your arts cards over here, you do a big crit, and then bada boom, bada bing, you refund a lot of your NP, because this guy's NP gain is pretty high. It's pretty high up there. Not the most insane thing in the game, but for a more modern servant, it is pretty good. So yeah, aside from like all that, that's like all the praises I have for him. I think all that stuff is really good. But then you kind of start to notice like little cracks here every now and then. Like the fact that the arts buff is only for one turn does kind of make him feel a little bit more burst damagey, when the current meta for FGO, we're starting to get really, really big enemies over here. I mean, for Paper Moon, there just seems to be a lot of enemies that have at bare minimum like 1 million HP on their first HP bar. Now, they're not making us fight like all of that at once yet. They're not like, okay, first bar is 1 mil, second bar is 2 mil, right? They're not getting that crazy. They usually break them up, but the enemies are starting to get beefier and beefier. And so being able to do one turn of really good damage is not quite as good as it used to be in, say, years 1 to 2, right? You need to be able to really sustain yourself over a longer fight, because these enemies are really, really chunky. Like they're going to be able to take quite a few hits, right? Being able to just like throw a 700k NP at an enemy might not actually kill them anymore. They might still survive with a decent chunk of their HP left. So, you know, maybe beefing up this skill a little bit can help them out just a little bit, right? That could be a nice thing to do. I think buffing this up to 3 turns, and then maybe even potentially making this like a party-wide evasion, I think that could help give him a lot of extra tech as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I would like to see something like stars per turn over here, right? And let him be kind of this arts crit support type servant. I think that'd be a very good niche for him to fall in, because I think this was a huge step in the right direction. This charging of the NP gauge was really, like, that was huge for him, because it was like seeing what the value in the servant was, that being his NP, and then kind of tailoring him to be able to get to that a bit easier. This was kind of like whatever when it dropped, but now since he's kind of shaping into actually being this arts crit support type servant, it starts to make a little bit more sense. And it's like, okay, so he could do like double debuffs on the enemy, and then he can also give you crit support, and then he can really get to his NP easier. I think that's kind of nice. But I don't know, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think that while Sherlock again has the moniker for me of like the best servant you'll probably never use, I think he's kind of on that cusp, right? Like kind of how I was talking about Gilgamesh before he got his buff on New Year's. I was like, yeah, he's good, but he definitely feels like he needed a buff, but it was kind of hard to assume what buff he would get, because Gilgamesh was one of those servants that if you gave him something a little too good, he might become one of the most like busted bonker servants in the game. And I feel like Sherlock is in a similar position to Gilgamesh pre-buff, where it's like they're going to be very careful on what they actually give him. But I think extending this to like 3 turns over here, the party-wide dodge could be nice. That might be a little bit of cope on my part, but the stars per turn I think is also going to be very nice. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. You guys usually have some really interesting ideas for what these servants could get as like lore buffs, because you guys are like, well, technically because of this, he could have this. And I'm like, I didn't even think of that. That's really cool. But love to hear all that in the comments down below. And I will catch you guys in the next video, which, you know, we're moving into anniversary, right? It's about to get real hype and real exciting, but don't let that hype consume you. Don't summon for this guy, right? Just summon for the cute fox lady who comes out in a couple of days. But with all that being said, I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Peace, late guys.